A new era is beginning way too soon at Mississippi State. College football simply will not be the same without Mike Leach, who we still continue to mourn the loss of and just miss every single day. But rest assured, the Bulldogs are going to be just fine. They're in great hands with Zach Arnett, and they're going to continue the success that Mike Leach left behind. The Bulldogs will be moving forward, but Mike Leach will never be forgotten. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, guys. We're so glad that you could join us today as we break down everything you need to know about the Mississippi State Bulldogs, predicting their schedule and record for this upcoming college football season. As always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below, including those expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com, including our Patreon account for exclusive college football content there year-round. Become a member of our Patreon Wall of Fame. And check out our mailing address as well. We would love for you guys to send us some of your team's gear, whether it's from Mississippi State or anybody else. Send us some gear to be represented in every single Gridiron Expert video as we expand our GE Nation from coast to coast. So let's take a look at Mississippi State, guys. Again, it was a really successful 2022 season that just ended on a sour note with the tragic passing of Mike Leach, who, again, it's just not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same without him on the sidelines. It's not going to be the same without his quips that he says in interviews and just the style of play that he brought to the game. But we're going to continue to move on. Mississippi State going to continue to thrive despite his loss. The Bulldogs finished the year at 9-4, won an emotional bowl game over Illinois in honor of Mike Leach to finish the year again at 9-4. And this year under Zach Arnett, this is a team that still has a chance to be very, very solid. Look at the offense. Will Rogers is still there. He's still there, the number one passer in Mississippi State history with over 10,000 passing yards, over 1,300 yards more than number two, Dak Prescott. He's back after throwing for nearly 4,000 yards, 35 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions last year. Jaquavius Marks returns as the leading rusher this year. 2 of their top 3 receivers return. The offense is going to be just fine for Mississippi State, although Zach Arnett kind of go for a more balanced approach, I guess. It's not going to be strictly all air raid at Mississippi State. They're certainly going to run the ball a little bit more. So you're going to maybe see some of those numbers where Will Rogers come back, but in the end, it might lead to a much better, more well-rounded offensive attack for the Bulldogs this year. You take a look at the defense. That's Zach Arnett's baby, right? I mean, he was the defensive coordinator under Mike Leach. He gets promoted from DC to the head coaching position. I think the defense is going to still be really, really good for Mississippi State this season. Only 4 starters are back, but this is a unit that gave up just 23 points per game last year, only 135 rushing yards, and only 210 passing yards per game. I mean, this is a good defense. If you look at the Bulldogs last year, they allowed over 28 points just 4 times, and 3 of those instances were to LSU, Alabama, and Georgia. Last year's schedule was brutal. They still managed to go 9-4. And look, if you're allowing a little over 28 points to those 3 schools, I think that's okay. Their top 3 tacklers do return, led by Jet Johnson and Nathaniel Watson, both at the linebacking position, both with over 100 tackles last year. This Bulldogs defense still going to be very, very good. And this team, in a way, could surprise if they can navigate another absolutely brutal schedule in 2023. You take a look at it, guys. Life in the SEC is tough, especially in the SEC West. That part is brutal. You look at the Eastern opponents they do draw. They draw South Carolina and Kentucky. So not the easiest games in the world, but certainly could have been better. Could have been Georgia and Tennessee. And luckily, the Bulldogs do avoid them. But you take a look at their schedule. I do think they start 2-0. I think they beat Southeast Louisiana, no issue. And then they beat Arizona. Some would say, why are you glossing over them so quickly? It's still a Power 5 opponent. And you're right. But why am I glossing over them? Because Arizona's defense is terrible. Mississippi State won 39-17 out in Tucson last year. The Mississippi State secondary this year has some concerns. The Bulldogs a little bit concerning in the back 7, or at least in the secondary. Front 7 should be pretty solid. But Arizona's defense is even worse, and their secondary is even worse, after giving up 259 passing yards per game. You got a bad secondary facing one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC and Will Rogers. I like Mississippi State to get the job done. Jaden DeLora has himself a day 2 for the Wildcats. It's maybe closer than a 22-point game, but the Bulldogs do beat Arizona heading into their first conference game against LSU. This was an interesting game last year. In Death Valley, the Bulldogs got off to a great start, led 13-0, and they just imploded and lost 31-16. LSU is a lot better than they were last year. They're certainly a lot better at week 3 of this season than they were in like week 3 of last year. The Tigers are the reigning SEC West champions. They've got so much coming back. Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors. The defense is absolutely unbelievable. And it should be noted, that while Mississippi State has given LSU some tough tests in recent years, they've even won a few games in recent years. But that's all they've done. They're 3-20 against LSU since 2000. Since the turn of the century, they've just won 3 games against the Tigers. I don't see them taking down LSU this year, a team that has playoff aspirations. Yes, they have home field advantage, but it's not going to be enough. The Bulldogs are up their first game of the year at 2-1, and I think they lose their next 2 games at South Carolina and against Alabama. The South Carolina game's interesting. I think the first time these two teams have met since 2016 between South Carolina and Mississippi State. But Williams-Brice Stadium, not an easy place to play by any means. And we mentioned that Bulldogs secondary. They do bring in 3 Power 5 transfers, but they're doing that to replace the 3 starters that they lose. And the Power 5 transfers don't have much playing experience and starting experience from their respective programs. You look at the South Carolina team that has home field advantage, which is very tough, facing one of the better quarterbacks in the country, and Spencer Rattler, certainly in the SEC. I just don't see a recipe for Mississippi State to get the win here, especially considering that the Gamecock secondary of their own is pretty solid. South Carolina's defensive weakness is stopping the run. Jaquavius Marks might have a better game than people think. Zach Arnett's team might run the ball more than people think, but Mississippi State not going to have enough to beat South Carolina on the road, and I don't think they have a shot to beat Alabama in Starkville. They've lost 15 straight games to the Crimson Tide, lost 30-6 last year, and have been outscored by Alabama 182-22 in the last 5 meetings. Alabama's defense is going to be phenomenal once again. I'm afraid it could be another beating in Starkville. Mississippi State, finishes 2-3, 3-3 at the midway point with a win over Western Michigan. So there you go. Halfway through the season, bye week comes at a perfect time. They're 3-3. They need 3 more wins to go bowling, and for me, that's what I would consider a successful year in year 1, first full year under Zach Arnett. Considering everything that kind of happened at the end of last year and who they lose, especially in the secondary and things like that, the change in styles and everything, getting to a bowl game would be successful for the Bulldogs in 2023. They come out of their bye week, and their reward for getting a week of rest is back-to-back road games. That's not good. I mean, regardless of who you are, playing back-to-back road games is never fun. They go on the road to Arkansas, a team they beat 40-17 in Starkville last year, a game where Arkansas did not have their star quarterback in KJ Jefferson, but I'm here to tell you that even if he had been playing, it wouldn't have mattered. Arkansas was losing that game regardless because their defense was god-awful. This year, their defense should improve a little bit. One of the worst secondary in the country should take a little bit of a step forward with a lot of starters coming back. And I think home field advantage plays a bigger role here than people realize. You've got an Arkansas team now that has home field advantage. You've got an Arkansas team that's going to have a healthy KJ Jefferson. You've got an Arkansas team that has Rocket Sanders and a strong offensive line, a defensive line that's at a program record last year with 42 sacks, led the SEC. I like this Arkansas defense improved just enough to get the win over Mississippi State. Last year was a blowout victory for the Bulldogs. The year before, Mississippi State probably should have won in Fayetteville had they been able to make a field goal. They missed 3 field goals and a 3-point loss. I think this game's similar to that. Not necessarily from my field goal perspective, but in terms of a competitive standpoint. We're going to see a close game in Fayetteville, but I do think Arkansas has enough to get this win, especially offensively. So the Bulldogs dropped that game. They're 3-4, and I think they dropped the second road game on the road at Auburn. This is a big pivot point of the year for Auburn, more so than Mississippi State. The Tigers now in year 1 under Hugh Freeze. And when you look at the last 2 meetings, Mississippi State should have lost to Auburn each of the last 2 years. Instead, they won. They had a huge comeback in 2021 at Auburn, and then last year blew a 24-6 lead, allowed Auburn to come back, take a 33-30 lead. Mississippi State tied it up and then ultimately won the game in overtime, 39-33. But now they're going on the road, back to the Plains, not an easy place to play. An Auburn team that has some stability now with a new coach that people are actually excited about. A coach that knows how to coach an offense with Robbie Ashford, maybe Jarquez Hunter as well at running back. The defense returns 9. I don't think Auburn's a world beater by any means, but at home they should be able to contain Mississippi State and get this win. Again, back-to-back road games, not easy. Back-to-back road games that are in tough environments. They drop both. Mississippi State goes from 3-3 to 3-5. They enter the month of November needing still 3 wins in their final 4 games to go bowling. What's good for them is the fact that 3 of those 4 games are at home in Starkville. Take care of business at home, and you will go to the postseason. To keep those hopes alive, you've got to beat Kentucky. And I think they do. It's a weird series, right, between Mississippi State and the Wildcats. Like, the home team has won every game since 2015. They've just been alternating. Its home team wins in 15, 16. So last year, it was on the road. Kentucky won. Kentucky won 27-17. Shut down that air raid attack. Shut down Will Rogers. Fantastic defensive performance. I'm going to stick with the trend here. Kentucky's offense is improving, no doubt about it. They got a great running back in Ray Davis. They got Devin Leary transferring in from NC State. The offense should be a lot better than it was last year. Will Levis just too sporadic. But the defense, a couple question marks there. Typically strong under Mark Stoops, but I could see Mississippi State kind of having a breakthrough game here. The sense of urgency is up a little bit. Home field advantage is there. Clearly, there's a major advantage for both these teams in this series. So until kind of proven otherwise, I'm siding with the home team in between Kentucky and Mississippi State. Give me the Bulldogs to get their 4th win of the year. And they're going to be in a position in the final couple of weeks of the year where they have to win their last 2 games to go bowling because they're going to lose to Texas A&M. That one to me feels kind of obvious. I know they beat A&M last year 42-24. I know the year prior they beat A&M 26-22 in College Station. Look at the state of that Texas A&M program the last 2 years. Last year going 5-7. The year before, another disappointing year. We're coming off a loss to Arkansas, I believe it was. It's just not a good team. This year, I think they actually have a good team. They've got 20 starters back. Bobby Petrino's calling the shots on offense. Should take a major step forward. The 12th man late in the year for a team that might be in the hunt for an SEC title, might be in the hunt for the playoff. We don't know, but a team that's not going to be only a 3 or 4 win team at this point, I think Mississippi State drops it. It's one of the toughest environments of the year, and honestly, probably will be the toughest environment that Mississippi State encounters in the entirety of 2023. You know, South Carolina's not easy, Arkansas's not easy, Auburn's not easy, but I don't know if any of those places really truly compare to the 12th man in College Station. So they fall to A&M, say we got to win their last 2 to go bowling. They beat Southern Miss, because their 5th win should beat them out of the Sun Belt, which means in perfect fitting fashion, if you want to go bowling, you've got to win the Egg Bowl over Ole Miss. And I love it when rivalry games come down to this. Ole Miss should have clinched bowl eligibility by this point. I don't think we have to worry about that. But I love when rivalry games have even more to play for other than pride, other than bragging rights, other than a trophy. All those things are important and they're great. But you factor in the winner of this goes to a championship game. The winner of this clinches bowl eligibility. Whatever it may be, that's where it gets interesting. Thanksgiving night, Mississippi State at home. If you win, you go to the postseason. Do you do it? Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Zach Arnett, his defense steps up, slows down this Ole Miss offense that's going to be led by Quinshon Judkins. And here's the thing. The last few years under Zach Arnett, the strength of Mississippi State's defense typically has been stopping the run. Last year, only giving up 135 rushing yards per game. It wasn't bad, right? The year before that was a little bit better. The Bulldogs have been pretty stingy up front, and that's going to be their strength again this year, right? I'm concerned about the secondary a little bit, but the defensive line and the linebacking core especially, they're strong. And I think they bottle up Quinshon Judkins, forcing Jackson Dart or Spencer Sanders, whoever it is, to win the game solely through the air. Can they do that? 100%. Will Zach Arnett and the Bulldogs allow that to happen? Not a chance. Mississippi State won last year on the road, 24-22. The sense of urgency is up, and I think they get it done. Mississippi State wins this game 6-6. They're going bowling in their first year under Zach Arnett, and for me, there's no better way to start your tenure. You know, with the changes that are being made, the schedule that you've been dealt, this is not a team that I expect to go out and win 8 games like they did last year in the regular season. I don't think that's going to happen. The road slate is way too difficult, and even some of the home games, LSU and Alabama, way too difficult. The Bulldogs aren't quite there yet, but they are going to be very competitive. They still got a lot of talent. They still got a lot of experience, and I think they're not going bowling. It's absolutely absurd. Give me the Bulldogs at a 6-6 season, and whoever they play in their bowl game, you can't predict that far out, but I would like them there. I think, regardless, Zach Arnett finishes his first year in Starkville with a winning record by season's end, but for now, postseason berth is what we're going to predict. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Our last SEC team to predict tomorrow, our SEC recap, and then we move on to the next conference. You do not want to miss out on that. Continue to like, continue to comment, continue to subscribe. Check out everything down in the description below. Our expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Our Patreon account for exclusive college football content year-round. Our mailing address to send us some Mississippi State gear or whoever your team may be to represent your team in every single Gridiron Expert video as we expand our GE Nation from coast to coast. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.